Okay, this is an interview of Solomon Brauner. I'm sorry. It's Wednesday, July 31st, 2002, approximately 9 o'clock at the Division of Military Naval Affairs Headquarters, Latham, New York. The interviewer is Michael Russert. Could you tell me your name, place, and date of birth, please?
Solomon Brauner, Brooklyn, New York, May 12th, 1918.
What was your pre-war education?
Very, very varied. I had attended several different colleges, nighttime only, because I was working and went to school at night. I never received a degree, though had I taken certain courses toward a degree, which I hadn't done, I had enough time in to have earned a degree.
So, what were your occupations prior to the war?
I was an apprentice blacksmith in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. I spent 2 years of a 4-year apprenticeship. And I left that from the same civil service list. I was offered a job paying twice as much money in Washington, D.C. And so that was with the Census Bureau in Washington, D.C., and I took that. I spent that a year. I had previously taken the exam for New York City policeman, patrolman, and I made that, and they appointed me when I was about a year down in Washington, D.C., and that was an improvement in career or work. It was a 20-year retirement with merit promotions, so it was desirable, and you know, I took it.
Mm-hmm. Could you tell us when you heard about Pearl Harbor and what your reaction was to it?
Yes. I was a member of a beach club. It was a J.P. Day club in Manhattan Beach, Brooklyn. It was on a Sunday. We were there, we were dancing, and there was an announcement. I think it was December 7th, was it?
Yes.
And it was a Sunday, and all of a sudden there was a hush. You know, it was a noisy place. There must have been about 200 people, you know, dancing, and the hush. You couldn't hear anything for about 30 seconds, maybe. And then all of a sudden there was a rush for telephones. And they were lined up at the coin telephones.
What was your reaction to this when you heard about it?
Astounded, a little bit surprised, didn't know what to think. Just sat down like everybody else. It was kind of, to some people it was actually shocking. I don't feel shocked, but I felt astounded by the news.
When did you enter military service?
I think it's in November.
We don't know, we have to know the exact date, what year?
Oh, 42.
Okay.
You know, like November 42 is the way I didn't enter the service, I enlisted.
You enlisted, okay.
This was into the cadet program, the pilot training,
Mm-hmm.
and I was called up in January 43. That was my actual entrance.
Okay, could you tell us about your pilot training and where you went and so on?
It seems that they were having a large washout rate in the pilot training program. So, and some of this was the learning. And they decided to have college training detachments called CTDs. And so I was inducted through the base at that time. It was Army Air Corps, and inducted, went to Atlantic City, was my first base, and that was basic training, regular Army basic training. We weren't brought in as cadets, we were brought in as the Army basic training. And from there we went to the college training detachments, and my particular group went to Syracuse University. We were there, I don't know, 4, 5, or 6 weeks, and college courses. Now the training, the pilot training was a condensed part. It would take 4 years, it would take 36 months. Each year was condensed into 9 weeks. And so this college training detachment was a sort of preparation for the very intensive training that there was. Thereafter, I went to San Antonio, Texas, where I was inducted as a cadet. And that was pre-flight school. From pre-flight school, we went to primary school, which is this primary school, and this is a yearbook. I was in class 44C.
Okay, could you point out your picture? Is that in there?
Yes.
Yes.
That's me in this yearbook. A primary school, which was in Coleman, Texas.
Okay, got it.
And but I washed out there because every time I got a new plane, different plane, or a new maneuver to learn, I had thrown up. But I had soloed, and I was doing quite well. And I was very much surprised when they had me up before a board of four of the instructors. And they were washing me out. And the flight surgeon was there too. And they wondered if they couldn't send me on to navigation, you know, become navigator. And the flight attendant, the flight surgeon nixed it.
What kind of planes did you train on?
PT-18s in primary school. First Cessnas. I forget the number. Cessnas, and there were some Piper Cubs, but I was never in a Piper Cub. I was in a Cessna. They were very much alike. They're super little planes. Like a Ford, you know, one of those beginning Fords. And then PT-18s, I think it was a Fairchild PT. I think PT stood for primary trainer.
Okay, what happened after you washed out of flight school?
I was sent to Amarillo, Texas, which was a replacement depot. There was some testing, and I was there, I don't know, about 3 weeks or so. And from there they sent me to Buckley Field, Colorado, as an armorer. And someone explained to me, they based this on my background of having 2 years apprenticeship as a blacksmith. From armament school, I was sent to Kingman, Arizona, for what the hell did I call it? training. Training, you know, they had another name for it, but I can't think of what they called it, but that was a school in Kingman, Arizona. Finished there, and they sent everybody in all different directions, and I wound up in Taunton, Massachusetts, before taking a boat. And I don't remember whether it was Boston or New York we left out of, but the States, and I was there for about 5 days, and then boarded a ship to, it was a ship that was converted to a troop ship. It was one of the newest, I think it was called the America before, and the military gave it a different name though. And about 6 days to get to Liverpool.
What year was it when you arrived over there?
I think it was early '44.
Okay.
That's stuff. And there I was in a replacement depot, and at that time, Patton was crossing France. He was moving fast, and they needed gasoline. So gasoline coming in by plane and rail and etc. So from the replacement depot, they took, I don't know, 200 to 400 men. It was a big number of men, and they sent us to these various towns where there were jerry cans, the 5-gallon gas cans, and we would unload either a railroad car or a plane, and then load it onto another plane which was headed for France, and we called it petrol for Patton. That's what it was. And so we went around, and that lasted about 3 weeks or a month. We did it, and then naturally we all got back to the replacement depot, and along came a captain from the 6th Cavalry, and he picked up 4 men. I was one of them, to join the 6th Cavalry. And it was a 6th Cavalry Squadron Mechanized. And I joined them just before the Rhine crossing, about 10 miles before the Rhine. The first town sign I remember seeing was Andernach, A-N-D-E-R-N-A-C-H. That was before crossing. And I think where we crossed was on Pontoon Bridge. I think the town at this side of the Rhine was Doppert. I think something like that. It's in here. And my first troop, there were 5 troops in each squadron, 6th Cavalry Squadron. I had 5 troops, A, B, C, E, and F. A, B, C were frontline troops. E and F were just behind them in the half tracks and armored tanks, few light tanks, and a lot of jeeps. In the cavalry they called them bantams. I don't know why. But That's what a lot of bantam's. There was no glass. There was an iron shield with a slit, to look through. And that's it. We crossed, and an interesting thing. When we got to the other side of the Rhine, the ABC troops and the EF troops got through. You know, we cleaned up where they hid, and all of a sudden we heard that group headquarters was being attacked. We turned around to rescue group headquarters. And we continued on. We liberated a number of camps.
Were you assigned to Patton's Third Army, or were you?
Patton's Third Army until almost somewhere near the end of the war. We were transferred to Virgil Patch's First Army. Then we continued on. We were about 15 miles short of Berlin, and we would have been in Berlin, but we were stopped. The explanation I got, we were stopped because they wanted to let the Russians get into Berlin first. That's what happened. And just about, I don't know, 4 or 5 days before the end of the war, I think Roosevelt died. We were in the Sudetenland. I don't know, it was a city or town called Rossbach, Rossbach. And it was right at a point, I don't know if it was in Czechoslovakia or in Germany, but we were all called out one day to be told that Roosevelt died. And there was almost a tear in everybody's eye. That was it was a blow. We felt stunned by that. And shortly after that was, you know, the war ended. And we were sent, so 6th Cavalry was sent to, in a province called Thuringia, Thuringia, or IA. And we were just an occupying force. And that was that picture, Hildburghausen is where we were. And we were there a while, and then we, I don't know how long, 3 weeks or so, and then we were sent to Berlin. We were the 2nd outfit. I think the 2nd paratroopers were the 1st into Berlin. We were the 2nd outfit into Berlin, and we took up space. And in Berlin, all the while, my what is it called, modus, the number, I was a rifleman. And in Berlin, I became a mail clerk. And I stayed there, and I liked living in Berlin. We were conquering heroes, you know. Things were going our way. And I liked it. I turned down 2 rotations, meaning, you know, chance to go back home. And then they shipped a group of us out of Berlin, and I put in to go home. Wound up in Camp Philip Morris in Le Havre, you know, waiting for the boat. Came back on the USS Champlain. It was an aircraft carrier. And we were trying to avoid, Captain kept talking to us, you know, on the loudspeaker, and they're trying to avoid a storm. And evidently, we didn't. And the most unusual thing that I ever saw in my life was when we got off the boat. We knew we were in a storm, we'd be padded around. The after deck, you know, it's a flat, and it extends beyond the hull.
Mm-hmm.
Well, God, we looked at that, and I don't know how thick that deck was, but it was like a ski ball alley. There must have been high waves lifting the boat and bent that deck. It was strange, but nice to get home. But I was at Fort Dix, New Jersey, in March. That was the I don't know what they call it, the exit anyway. But there's a title for it.
Discharge?
Yeah, a discharge, a depot or whatever. And they discovered I had amoebic dysentery. So I was on an infectious disease ward for 3 weeks or so, which delayed my discharge. That was it.
Okay, I wanted to ask you go back and ask a couple of questions. What were your feelings about Patton himself?
Don't know, never saw him. But what I got, he was a rough and tumble guy, good general, good. That's all, and stern. Maybe not often fair, but he was stern. I might cite a couple of interesting anecdotes. In one of the towns in Germany, you know, that we had liberated, I forget the name of it, but they had a few factories. And in those factories were a number of French soldiers. They were still in their blue uniforms, most of them. And they were captured in North Africa. And I was corresponding with a girl in Paris. And I mentioned this, you know, and I had become pretty conversant in French. And I mentioned it to one of these Frenchmen. He says, gee, says, my family doesn't know if I'm living or dead. They haven't heard from me. Could you write to them? I said, oh, sure. All of a sudden, there's a mob around me. Everyone wants me to write to them. So I told them, very simply, you gather the names together, all the names, put them in a list, like Paris, all those who were in Paris, all those in Lyon, Bordeaux, you know, wherever. I said, and I'll write to the top name, and I'll give them the list of the other people and ask them to do that. And that's what I did. I wrote about 20 letters, you know, like that. And I told them, I have today met your husband or your son, you know, he's in good health, and you will soon see him. And, you know, very nice. Please advise these other people, you know, then put down the others. I got letters, and a few of them had what they call bouquets. That's a pressed flower in the letter. One letter was really funny. She thanked me for everything. Where it said she liked the sentiment and the idea that, you know, what I had done, but her husband was there before the letter. And another interesting anecdote. In Berlin, I was pulling guard on a bank, just posted outside the bank. And the people were walking by. And little old guy, at about 70-ish, short, portly, coming up to me, and he spoke a fair English, you know, a little broken. And he told me he's a retired professor, university professor, and asked me where I was from. So I told him New York. He apologized to me for the devastation that they had wreaked on New York. And I said, oh, no, nothing happened in New York. He says, that's the American propaganda you got. And a number of peculiar incidents. Or another thing about Berlin, the Russians soldiers hadn't been paid for 3 or 4 years. They just hadn't been paid. And the Americans made a mistake. We gave the printing plates of the money. We had what it was called Allied money, Alliiertes Geld, and they printed it up. 3, 4 years' salary. So everyone was wearing a shoulder bag full of money. And they had watches going up. They were buying watches, from the GIs. And for the first 2 days, they put the watch to the ear, and if they couldn't hear it, it was no good. Like a 17, give them a Mickey Mouse watch. What they wanted. They paid $200 for it. And but in about the 3rd day, they got wised up.
You said that you liberated some concentration camps?
Yes.
Could you?
Verdun, they're 2 close little cities. Verdun, W-E-R-D-A-U, and Zwickau, Z-V-I-C-K-A-U, Verdun, Zwickau. And there were a number of 3 or 4 camps. We went in different directions. We went there, and the different groups liberated them, and we brought them back to a little plateau where we were just outside the town. And there must have been about a total of 400. They were Englishmen, Americans, Poles. There weren't any Frenchmen. That's what they were. And we gave them food. We had I don't know where they brought all the food for them, but they did, evidently. They got food, and they ate.
Now, were these POWs?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these are POWs.
Mm-hmm. How did they react when they first?
They looked like civilians.
Mm-hmm.
None of them were soldiers. These were civilians, men and women.
Okay.
Men and women. But they were in the camps. I mentioned Ordruf before. My particular unit did not weren't first into Ordruf. There was someone aside from us got into Ordruf first. They must have gone, the Germans must have left there about 2 hours before, or 1 hour before, because there was a mountain must have been 50 feet wide and about this high, bodies, men and women, and they all looked emaciated, and they all had a bullet hole in their head. And but somebody, a general, somebody decided to have all the American units that are close enough to go through there. And we did, before any of those bodies were removed, and it was that big bunch. And then I went roaming around the camp, and I saw a man sitting in looked like a bathhouse locker, a large bathhouse locker, and he was sitting there on a wooden bench. If he weighed 60 pounds, he weighed a lot. was skin and bones. He looked at me, and I looked at him, and I wanted to talk. I wanted to say something to him. I couldn't. Nothing could come out. And he kind of recognized it and looked at it and had to turn away. And I wanted to ask him, how come you're not, you know, how do you get away? But after there were about 6 who did. Evidently they hid what they saw was going on, and they hid. That was an order of OHRDRUF.
Where were you when you heard about VE Day?
Oh boy, yes. Rostock is where they told us about Roosevelt. I think it was still in, that was about 4 days later or so. I think we were still in Rostock.
What was the general reaction of your unit and yourself?
About Roosevelt?
No, the
about
VE
Day?
Yes.
Oh, elation. Elation. We were very happy. Felt we'll be going home soon.
How did, when you were in Berlin, what were the relations between the soldiers and the people that were living there?
Very friendly. Very friendly. Funny thing about them, they're all complaining about the Russians. Every woman you met would tell you the Russians raped the women, but not me. Every woman would tell you. That's what they did. Only one woman told me she was in an apartment. She lived in an apartment. She had a little daughter. And in the next apartment there was a woman whose husband was an officer in the German army. And evidently, this one Russian who came into her apartment looked at it and he said, "Bear, are there any clothes?" And he looked into the icebox or whatever, and he saw that very little food. And when he went into the other apartment, he saw a lot of food and a lot of clothes, dresses. So he took about half the dresses out of that woman's apartment, brought it into this one, took about half the food out and brought it into her. This Russian did. That's the only nice thing anyone ever told me about the Russians. But I had met a lot of Russians.
That was the next question.
I saw, there was some pretty wise guy Russians. There was, I was looking for a Contax camera. I wanted to buy a Contax camera. So I was speaking to a German, and then he called over a Russian, and a Russian soldier, and he told him that I was looking for a Contax camera. So he said, yeah, he get it from me, and he took me to an apartment, in an apartment house, and there were about 4 Russians in uniform. They didn't have a camera. All they wanted to make an arrangement with me. They wanted to buy American soldiers' uniforms. I learned later that there were some of these groups of Russians that, used American uniforms, and they boarded trains, and they held up trains. And no, I told them, I'm interested in buying a Contax camera. I said, I'm not selling anything. I'm looking to buy a Contax camera. And that was that. I left them.
How do you think the war and your military service changed your life?
Well, I had a feeling when I go back, I don't want to be a cop anymore. But I had 90 days in which to either go back or find something. Now, there were big shortages. So I knew I didn't have a resume to get a job, a good job. So I figured maybe try to get into a business. But everywhere I went to try to, you know, establish a source of supply, something. No, we want to buy it. We got nothing to sell. We want to buy it. That was the situation. A lot of shortages. Mm-hmm. So I did return to the police job, and I got married. Now, it was in March '46 that I was discharged, and Thanksgiving Eve '46 I got married. And you know, it's tough on a wife and family for a cop. The various hours, we would turn hours, and you know, the danger that they're, so the pressure of family. And her father was in the furniture business, and he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I left the police job.
Okay, did you ever make use of the GI Bill or anything like that?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I went to 2 nights a week, given the night school, CCNY, and I got some kind of subsidy. I get $40, $50 a month. I got something like that. GI Bill. That was the only.
Do you belong to any veterans organizations?
Yes, Jewish War veterans. That's the only one.
Have you ever been in contact with any of the men that served with you in your unit, or have you gone to any reunions?
I haven't gone to any reunions because I never heard of any.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I was in contact with a few of the guys, but not from 6th Cavalry. 6th Cavalry was peculiar for me. I was a lot like peculiar guy. I was like a super professor there. These were guys from, well, they were headquartered in the States, in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So there were Georgia, Tennessee crackers in that. Vocabulary about 20 words. Every second word was a profanity. And, but they were good soldiers. They had been hunters, you know, and they were really good soldiers. But
how did you get along with them, being in New York City? How were you accepted?
They also I was Jewish, and some dumb guy. We're sitting around on the ground, and we're cleaning rifles, you know, taking them apart, cleaning, you know, in our helmets, gasoline in our helmets. And one of the guys is telling about his daddy had a general store, or had a general store. He would never serve a Jew or a nigger any time at all. You know, and I'm sitting there. I think he knew I was Jewish, but it didn't bother me because he just spouting. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. There's one place that there was a young kid. I noticed the kid staring at me. This is in the barracks. I'm sitting in my bunk, and he's.
Why don't we stop here and we'll put another tape in?
Oh.